it's Sayback here. Welcome back to my podcast. Today we're going to be looking at 3 major history myths people around the world still believe. Today we're uncovering fascinating stories, answering intriguing questions, and discovering that history is often stranger than fiction. We're diving into the 3 biggest myths in history, and these are stories that millions of people have heard. They appear in films, cartoons, school books, advertisements, and everyday conversations. But here's the thing about history. Just because a story has been repeated for hundreds of years doesn't make it true. And history is very good at hiding the truth. Let's get started. Myth number 1. People in the Middle Ages thought the earth was flat. Imagine you're living in Europe. Around the year 1200, there are castles, knights, kingdoms, and enormous cathedrals. You don't have electricity, smartphones, or cars. Because of this, many people imagined that everyone back then believed the earth was flat, almost like a giant dinner plate floating through space. You've probably even heard that Christopher Columbus, the person who discovered America, had to convince people that the earth was round before sailing across the Atlantic Ocean. It sounds like a great story. Unfortunately, it isn't true. In reality, educated people had known that the earth was round for nearly 2,000 years before Columbus was even born. Ancient Greek scholars were incredibly clever. Around 500 BC, the philosopher Pythagoras suggested that the earth was spherical. Later, Aristotle noticed something interesting. During lunar eclipses, when the earth blocks sunlight from reaching the moon, the earth's shadow is always curved, and a flat object can produce different shaped shadows, but only a sphere can create a circular shadow. Then came Eratosthenes. Over 2,200 years ago, he carried out one of the most impressive scientific experiments in history. He knew that in one Egyptian city, the sun shone directly down a deep well at midday on one particular day of the year. But in another city, farther north, objects still cast shadows at the exact same time. By measuring the angle of those shadows and estimating the distance between the 2 cities, he actually calculated the Earth's circumference. His estimate was astonishingly close to the answer, without satellites, airplanes, or modern technology. So, if the ancient Greeks knew the earth was round, surely that knowledge disappeared during the Middle Ages. Actually, no. Medieval universities taught that the earth was a sphere. Sailors understood it, scholars wrote about it, even many maps reflected this understanding. So where did the myth come from? During the 19th century, some writers wanted to make the Middle Ages seem far more ignorant than they really were. They created stories suggesting that Columbus bravely challenged people who believed in a flat earth. It made for a dramatic tale, but history simply doesn't support it. Columbus's voyage was controversial for a completely different reason. Most educated people agreed the earth was round. They just thought it was much larger than Columbus believed. They worried he would run out of food and water long before reaching Asia. Ironically, they were right about his calculations. If North and South America hadn't existed between Europe and Asia, Columbus's crew almost certainly wouldn't have survived the journey. So next time someone says Columbus proved the earth was round, you'll know the truth. He didn't prove the earth was round. He simply sailed somewhere nobody in Europe expected. Myth number 2. Vikings wore horned helmets. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a Viking. Chances are you're picturing a fierce warrior with a huge beard, carrying an axe, standing aboard a wooden longship, and wearing a helmet with enormous horns sticking out of each side. It's probably one of the most recognizable images in history. There's just one problem. Real Vikings almost certainly didn't wear horned helmets into battle. Archaeologists have discovered genuine Viking helmets, and none of them have horns. In fact, only a handful of complete Viking helmets have survived, because iron rusts over time. But every genuine example we found has been practical, simple, and designed for protection, not decoration. Think about it logically. If you were fighting someone with a sword, would you really want two giant handles sticking out of your helmet? Your opponent could grab them. This would make moving through a crowd more difficult. They could add unnecessary weight, and they would probably make balancing harder during combat. So why does everyone picture Vikings wearing horns? The answer has surprisingly little to do with the Vikings themselves. In the late 1800s, costume designers were creating outfits for German composer Richard Wagner's famous operas based on Norse legends. To make the characters look dramatic and powerful on stage, they designed helmets with large horns. Audiences loved the look. Artists copied it. Illustrators copied the artists. Hollywood copied the illustrators. Soon, advertisements, cartoons, comics, and television shows were all using horned Viking helmets. After enough generations saw the same image, everyone assumed it must be highly accurate. Interestingly, horned helmets did exist thousands of years before the Vikings. Archaeologists have discovered ceremonial bronze helmets with horns dating back to the Bronze Age. However, these weren't Viking helmets. They were probably used for religious ceremonies or special rituals. So the image of a horned helmet isn't completely invented. It's just been attached to the wrong people. Sometimes history becomes mixed together, and myths are born. Myth number 3. The Great Wall of China is the only man-made object you can see from space. This is probably one of the most repeated facts in the world. You may have heard a teacher mention it. You may have seen it in a documentary. Perhaps someone in your family told you. The claim goes like this. The Great Wall of China is the only human-made object visible from space. And it even sounds believable. After all, the wall stretches for over 21,000 kilometers. Surely something that long must be easy to see from space. Well, not really. The first thing we need to ask is, what do we mean by space? The International Space Station orbits Earth around 400 kilometers above the surface. That counts as space. Astronauts aboard the station have said that under perfect conditions, using careful observation, they can sometimes make out sections of the Great Wall. But it isn't obvious. It's actually very difficult to spot. Why? Because although the wall is incredibly long, it isn't very wide. Most sections are only a few meters across. From hundreds of kilometers above the Earth, that's tiny. On top of that, much of the wall is built from local stone and earth, meaning it perfectly blends into mountains, hills, and deserts around it, almost camouflaging it. Roads, airports, and even larger cities are often easier to notice than the wall because they create stronger contrast with the surrounding landscapes. Now, let's go much further away. Could you see the Great Wall from the moon? At all? No, absolutely not. From nearly 384,000 kilometers away, even cities disappear. The Great Wall is far too narrow to be visible with the naked eye. So, where did this myth even come from? Versions of the claims appeared long before humans even traveled into space. People just simply guessed that because the wall was incredibly long, it must be visible from above. Once astronauts finally reached orbit, they discovered reality was much more complicated. The Great Wall is an extraordinary achievement. It just isn't the giant line across Earth that many people imagine. And honestly, I think the real story is even more fascinating than the myth. So, today's episode reminds us that history is full of surprises and lies. People in the Middle Ages weren't convinced the Earth was flat. Vikings weren't charging into battle wearing giant horns. And the Great Wall of China isn't the obvious landmark from space that so many people believe it is. History isn't just about remembering names and dates. It's about asking questions. It's about looking at evidence and solid sources that we've found. And sometimes it's about discovering that the truth is even more incredible than myths. So here's a challenge for you. Next time someone tells you an amazing historical fact, don't believe it just because you've heard it before. Ask where the story comes from. Ask what the evidence says. Because as we've learned today, history has a funny way of surprising us. I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast, and I hope you tune in for the next one. Make sure to subscribe to me on Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And until then, goodbye. Stay curious.